Welcome to the 700 Club. An historic case at the Supreme Court that was heard in an unprecedented manner by phone. It dealt with this crucial religious freedom question. Should a group of nuns be forced to include birth control in their health insurance under Obamacare?
Well, since the hearings were held by phone, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg joined in from her hospital room. Paul Strand brings us the story from Washington.
From her hospital room, Justice Ginsburg insisted the Little Sisters of the Poor should have been forced to provide abortion-causing contraceptives to female employees, not be exempted.
You have just tossed entirely to the wind what Congress thought was essential, that is that women be provided these services with no hassle, no cost to them.
But the Little Sisters attorney argued the nuns would never buckle, meaning they'd face fines of $60 to $70 million a year for not complying, a heavy penalty to pay for practicing their religious freedom.
When the government imposes a burden on religion by telling the Little Sisters that they have to comply with the mandate or the accommodation or else, when the or else is massive penalties, that plainly provides a substantial burden on religious exercise.
The government's contraceptive mandate directed us to provide contraceptives and life-ending drugs in our health care plan or pay millions of dollars in fines, which would have crippled our ministry.
Lori Wyndham is also defending the Little Sisters.
It would be devastating for their ministry if they were fined and if they were forced to, if they were put to a choice between following their faith and living and being true to that and being able to continue the ministry.
The pandemic has changed so many things, including wiping out huge demonstrations outside the Supreme Court. This time there were just nuns praying for the Little Sisters of the Poor.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
And instead of addressing a big rally on the steps, well-known figures Skyped in to voice their support.
The Little Sisters of the Poor deserve permanent relief from the contraceptive mandate so that they can serve the elderly poor without violating their beliefs.
The federal government years ago gave the nuns a religious exemption, but in this case, states are insisting the feds can't do that.
Just be an all or nothing choice. You can only have a contraceptive mandate if you're willing to force nuns to do it.
It's hard to believe the state governments would go after and bully nuns who simply want to serve the elderly poor.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
This is a remarkable case, and it's remarkable that we get to listen in on the questions, and the questions from Justice Ginsburg were frankly chilling for me. She didn't seem to mind at all that there was this mandate and compulsion on the Little Sisters of the Poor to provide contraception services for their employees, and seemed to ignore that Congress has already given the exemption. What this case is about is, can the states come in and sue and say Congress doesn't have the authority to do that, which is yet another wrinkle on this. Here's the freedom that we have, and I submit that this freedom is under extreme pressure today. The freedom is Congress shall pass no law respecting the free exercise of religion. We focus a lot on the establishment, that there be no established religion, that there's no state religion, and we're all for that. But the other part of it, free exercise. The nuns have the free exercise. They can exercise their religion. If you go to work for nuns, what are you expecting? You're not expecting a secular company. You're expecting a religious order that is ancient. And you look at this and go, have we lost our minds? Have we lost all common sense? But more importantly, have we lost the First Amendment? In other news, the coronavirus outbreak is still taking a severe toll on the job market. John Jessup has the latest figures on that from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Gordon, another report today of high jobless claims in the wake of the coronavirus lockdowns. Nearly 3.2 million more Americans filed jobless claims last week. That brings the total number to 33 million from the times the lockdowns began. Well, with the economy devastated by the lockdowns, many states are now starting to slowly reopen. But some health experts warn it could be too soon. In places like New York City, the number of COVID-19 cases are falling. But as Jenna Browder reports, in others, they're still going up.
How soon is too soon? That's the question facing states as they look to reopen and new hotspots emerge around the country.
Until we have an effective vaccine, and unless something very unexpected happens, our viral enemy will be with us for many months and possibly many years.
The former head of the CDC predicting the number of coronavirus deaths in the U.S. will exceed 100,000 by the end of this month. In places like New York City, case numbers are going down. This New York Times analysis, though, showing numbers elsewhere nationwide are still rising. This coming as President Trump says he'll keep his coronavirus task force in place, but reorganize it.
I thought we could wind it down sooner, but I had no idea how popular the task force is.
And in a tweet, the task force will continue on indefinitely with its focus on safety and opening up our country again. We may add or subtract people to it as appropriate. The decision made after the administration suggested the task force could dissolve by the end of the month.
We have to get our country open again, and you see it. Look, you cover it. People want to go back. You're going to have a problem if you don't do it.
43 states will have lifted some restrictions by this weekend, but the virus numbers are still rising in at least 19 of them. Texas is one, where 1,000 new cases were recorded in a single day. And this week, Illinois had its largest one-day death toll since the pandemic began. And now the Associated Press reporting the administration shelved a guide by the CDC, giving step-by-step advice to local leaders on when and how to reopen public places. The 17-page report was supposed to be published last Friday. And that's the main concern now, how to reopen the country safely while the coronavirus continues to spread. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thank you, Jenna. The Michigan State Legislature is suing Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer, asking a judge to declare her stay-at-home order and other measures invalid and unenforceable. The suit says state law does not support Whitmer's actions and that she's violating separation of powers. Whitmer's spokesperson called the suit a, quote, partisan game by the Republican-led legislature. Churches also sued Whitmer this week. Michigan Live reports they said in federal court her executive orders banning public gatherings violate constitutional rights to freedom of religion and assembly. Well, newly released portions of a Justice Department memo show then Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein authorized Robert Mueller to take the Russia probe beyond its original scope. In a memo in May 2017, Rosenstein instructed Mueller to investigate links between the Russian government and people associated with the Trump campaign. But a few months later, in August, Rosenstein issued a second memo authorizing Mueller to investigate certain people in relation to possible crimes apart from the Russia probe, including campaign manager Paul Manafort and former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Congressional Republicans believe Mueller exceeded his authority. Well, turning overseas, Israel's Supreme Court has ruled that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu can form a new government while under indictment for corruption charges. The unanimous decision Wednesday clears the way for Netanyahu and his former political rival, now ally Benny Gantz, to work together in a power-sharing deal for a unity government. Critics challenged the deal, saying it was illegal and that an indicted official should not be allowed to serve as prime minister. But the court rejected those arguments, ending a 17-month political stalemate. Both men say they expect their coalition to be sworn into office, Gordon, next week.
Well, that's good news for Israel and a political compromise. Here's the effect of it, though. Once Netanyahu gets into power, which will happen very quickly next week, you can expect annexation in the West Bank. He's going to do that while there's still a Trump administration, and he can come under cover, if you will, of the U.S. if the UN tries to do anything about it. That will effectively end a two-state solution. So that's the impact of this. Could there still be two states with what's left on the West Bank and the Gaza Strip? Could that be even three states with Gaza Strip and Ramallah, maybe? But this is of grand importance. This is of historic ones. You're going to be redrawing maps in Israel.